So, just a quick tip. If you ever have leftover chips or leftover cheese balls or leftover any kind of snacks that are like breadcrumb consistency, I save these, and now instead of pulling out my breadcrumbs, all I have to do is crush them up. I'll probably stick them in a Ninja to tell you the truth. The Ninja's just really loud. And I'll use these in my recipe in place of breadcrumbs, and they work great, and that way you're not wasting anything. Y'all have a good one. I'll be right back. So, as you can see, I put the little bit of tortilla chips and the little cheese balls into the Ninja, and now we're going to crush them up. Just a little bit. So, with just a few quick pulses of the Ninja, we have breadcrumbs and no waste of the stale chips and stale cheese balls. I've also done this in the past with goldfish and Pringles. Alright, y'all, we're about to make ourselves a barbecue meatloaf, but we are not going to cook this. We are going to assemble it, and we are going to freeze it for later. So what I've got here is roughly 2¼ pounds of ground beef, and now I'm going to add 1 cup of the crushed up tortilla and cheese ball mix instead of 1 cup of breadcrumbs. The actual recipe calls for 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs and 1/2 cup of graham cracker crumbs. Well, I don't feel like digging out my graham cracker crumbs, so we're going to use the 1 cup of the I don't even know what to call it, cheese ball and tortilla chips. 2 room temperature eggs. Now this recipe calls for 2/3 cup evaporated milk, but I have made it in the past with buttermilk, and that's what I have, so that's what we're going to use. It gives it just a little bit of a tang. Tastes just fine. Nobody knows the difference. And the recipe called for 2/3 cup minced onion. Well, I put it in there, but it looks like a lot. Hopefully it'll be good. It also calls for 1 packet of dry onion soup mix. And I do have that, but I thought I'd put some Italian dressing mix in it, because that seems like it might taste real good too. So it also calls for salt and pepper to seasoning, to taste. Not only am I going to put salt and pepper in there, I'm also going to put some of my butt rub in it. What the recipe didn't call for is garlic. We can't live without our garlic in this house. I will just garlic to my heart's content. My Bad Byron's butt rub barbecue seasoning, because this is a barbecue meatloaf, don't forget. And to add a little bit of flavor, kelp. Sorry about that, I had to sneeze. Some sea seasoning iodine original kelp granules. And I put this in pretty much everything I make, which is I buy large quantities. Alright, now we're going to mix it all together with our hands. That's right, God's tool. We're going to get in there real deep like. But I can't hold the phone to record this, so I'll come back when I'm done. Alright, so next you want to take a nice big piece of aluminum foil, because you want to wrap that up real good and airtight so that it doesn't get freezer burnt. Alright, now we've got our aluminum foil. squish down in there, completely covering that pan, because that pan is not going to stay in your freezer. You're just using this pan as a mold. And after about 2 hours in the freezer, you're going to take this out. Well, I'll show you. Alright, so as you can tell, the pan is quite full. That's not a problem, because we're not going to be cooking this in this loaf pan. We're going to be cooking it on a cookie sheet or in a baking dish. Probably a baking dish. So I'm not really worried that it's all the way full to the top. Now we're going to wrap it up real nice and stick it in the freezer to let it form. It's very important that you make sure the sides especially are wrapped and folded over. And then I fold over the sides. Now when this comes out of the freezer, you're going to put these flaps down. But right now we don't want to do that, because we don't want them to freeze to the sides. You do not have to do this step. I just find it makes it easier for me to do it this way. Alright, now we're going to stick it in the freezer for 2 hours till it forms. And then I'll show you what we're going to do with it later. Good evening, everybody. It is still Tuesday the 19th. This is just a second video. This is a video showing you how I make my cheeseburger meatloaf. And this is also how I'm going to separate these videos so I know which meatloaf's which. So you'll be seeing cheeseburger meatloaf in every single clip of this meatloaf that I do. So what I've done is 2 1/4 pounds of ground beef. And now I'm going to add the 2 eggs, 1 heaping handful of a mix of freshly shredded, mild, sharp, and extra sharp yellow cheese, for which I'd like to thank Alex and Savannah for shredding for me today. 2, 4, 6 pounds of cheese. 2 pounds of mild, 2 pounds of sharp, and 2 pounds of extra sharp cheese. Shredded in this bowl. Next, we're going to put in the garlic, because this family likes garlic. Garlic with your heart, my friends. Roughly a teaspoon of super hot horseradish. Beaver extra hot horseradish. Yummy. Next, we're going to put in, and we don't want to put too much of this because it's spicy brown mustard, and I just put that super hot horseradish. We just want to give it a little kick. And maybe a teaspoon. Now, besides that cheese, there's something else that makes this a cheeseburger meatloaf. It's called relish. And we're going to put this last bit of dill relish I have in here with the juice, because remember I didn't put mayonnaise. And that's probably about a tablespoon. And dump that in there. Don't forget your Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce, I usually put about a tablespoon of that too. Oh yeah, that's going to be some good stuff there. Now, just to add a little bit of nutrition, I'm going to put that kelp in there. It doesn't really change the taste. Can't really tell it's in there, to tell you the truth. But I am not going to put salt and pepper in this. And I'll show you why in a minute. I'm going to put a little bit of Lowry's in there. About a teaspoon and a half. Season to your heart's content. Whatever you think looks good, put it in there. Alright, now it's time to mix that all up. With, again, the best tools the good Lord gave you. Get in there good. Now, I didn't mention this in the other meatloaf I made, but all you want to do, because if you mess with your meat too long, it's going to get stiff, and we don't want that. So what you want to do is get those eggs that are down there broken. You want their yolks broke, and you want these ingredients just mixed in with this meat. After you get them mixed in, they're all incorporated real good, you want to stop messing with it. Otherwise, you'll have a tough meatloaf, and nobody wants to eat a tough meatloaf. This is what your meatloaf should look like. It should be, you should be able to see the ingredients in there, but nothing in the bottom of the bowl. All that juice, all the sauce is all in the bowl. It's all in the meat, not in the bowl. And now we're ready to stick it in our loaf pan. Alright, we got our aluminum foil in there nice and good. Now we're going to stick our meatloaf in there. And you want to make sure that you press it down real good into this aluminum foil to get any air bubbles out that might form during the freezing process and really cause you a problem during the cooking process. So press it in there real good. Alright, so here is our cheeseburger meatloaf, all wrapped up and ready to go in the freezer for a few hours, and then we'll take it out. Alright, good folks, it is still the 19th at 10:30 at night, and now I am moving on to my taco meat sheet. Now, what might that be? Well, first off, we got to put our seasoning in. Alright, so this is 2 pounds of ground meat. So usually I would use 2 packets of taco seasoning or 6 tablespoons of taco seasoning. However, I don't want to dig into my pantry to get my homemade taco seasoning, so I'm just going to mix it up on the fly. The first thing we're going to do is, of course, garlic. I put roughly a tablespoon of garlic, and then we're going to put some onion powder, and I'll use roughly a tablespoon of garlic powder. I hate measuring, and my kids always steal my tablespoons for some reason, so that's the one I don't have. And of course, it wouldn't be taco seasoning without some cumin. My kids don't really care for cumin that much, so I only put about a half a tablespoon in there. And the next thing, just to give it a little bit of kick, Mr. Robert, this one's for you. We're going to give it a little bit of cayenne. Now, I said just a little bit of a kick because my 2 youngest ones, my twins, they don't really like hot stuff. So I put about a teaspoon of cayenne. If Mr. Robert was here making this, our mouths would be on fire because he'd use 2 or 3 tablespoons. I'm really sure. I've seen the man cook. That man can eat some cayenne. Now you notice there's no eggs in this and there's no breadcrumbs. And that's because we're going to put it in a sheet pan and cook it to make taco soup and burritos. So what you want to do is make sure all your spices are well incorporated and even. It doesn't look like they're even because of my shadows here, but they are. Now we're going to press it into a sheet pan. Now this is a full-size sheet pan. No, excuse me, this is a half sheet pan. And we're going to press that into there. I'll be right back. I forgot to mention you need to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Now usually when I use this big pan, I do 3 or 4 pounds of ground beef. But I still have to make my Italian meat sheet. So we just use 2 pounds, roughly 2 1/4 pounds of, and this is lean ground beef. It's 80% lean, only, that's not right. Anyways, it's lean ground beef. It's ground sirloin, actually. And so it's only 2 1/4 pound with the taco seasoning. Now we're going to put it in our 350 degree oven for 20 minutes. I'll be back. So, we are back with the taco meat sheet, part 2. What we're going to do now, we've taken this out of our oven. You don't want it fully cooked because it's going to, it's going to cook again after you stick it in the freezer and take it out and put it into your dish. Whatever you're using this taco meat for, it's gonna cook again. So you just want it a little brown. Just browned. That's all you want. You don't want it burnt. You still want it mooing a little, okay? I'm thinking about 150 degrees instead of 160, yes. So, that's what that looks like. We're going to let it cool just a little bit, and then we're going to get it out of there and put it in a container so it can cool off and go in the freezer. Alright, so we're back to the taco meat sheet. It's cooled off now, and we're going to put it into a colander and strain that grease off into a pot. Alright, so we are back to our Italian meat sheet. Anyways, and we're going to put it into the oven for 350, but I'm only going to put it in for 15 minutes this time. 20 minutes got it a little bit done more than I like. So, I'll be back. Alright, so we are back with our taco meat sheet, which I did write on there, but you can't really see it. Should have wrote it there, probably will in a minute. But what I wanted to cover first is I want to get all this air out of here. This air in here is the enemy. That will make your meat go freezer burnt. So what I'm going to do is open this little guy up and squeeze out as much of that air as I can and then shut it back up. But this is the end of the taco meat sheet until I make a meal with it, and that'll be a separate video. So y'all have a great night, and I'll talk to y'all later. Alright, so it is still the 19th at 11 o'clock at night, and now we're moving on to our Italian meat sheet. I want this ready so that when the taco meat sheet gets out, I can just put this one onto the pan and get it in the oven, because I'm getting tired. Alright, so there's 2 1/4 pounds of that ground meat, and I gotta put garlic. Garlic to your heart. Garlic to your heart's content, really. I opened the wrong side. I opened a little sprinkle side. That ain't important. Gonna put a little bit of onion powder in there. Some more of my kelp granules. That also gives it a nice little color. And of course, it wouldn't be an Italian meat sheet if I didn't add some Italian. Now, usually I'd make my own, but again, I'm just tired. And a little bit of salt. And a little bit of pepper that I forgot to get out. And a little bit of pepper. There we go. Now we're going to mix this up just so those seasonings are mixed into that meat. No more, or your meat will get tough. Alright, so after 15 minutes, I think maybe I'll have to just do 10. There must be something wrong with my oven. This is the Italian meat sheet. And we're going to do the same thing with this as we did with the taco meat sheet. We're going to strain it and let it cool and get all that good stuff down in my pot. So I'll be right back. Alright, so after 15 minutes, I think maybe I'll have to just do 10. There must be something wrong with my oven. This is the Italian meat sheet. And we're going to do the same thing with this as we did with the taco meat sheet. We're going to strain it and let it cool and get all that good stuff down in my pot. So I'll be right back.